Welcome to Building the Future with your host, Kevin Horick. Get ready to explore the cutting edge of innovation and entrepreneurship. From startups to industry giants, we're bringing you the visionaries shaping tomorrow. With listeners in over 150 countries, we're one of the fastest growing shows worldwide. Join Kevin, a seasoned software designer and tech expert, as we dive into the ideas and inventions changing our world. Building the Future starts now.
Building the Future is brought to you by iClerk.ai. Are you a small business owner, a professional, or company looking to automate? Do you have difficulty hiring staff to perform mundane knowledge work like reporting, form creation, or information analysis? Leverage the power of AI and the automation of agents, even if you don't have the time or experience. Try us out with little risk and no upfront investment. It's time to work smarter, not harder. Visit iClerk.ai to learn more and get started today.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Tim Huntingzer. He's the founder and CEO at XOto. Tim, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you're doing is actually really innovative and cool. But maybe before we get into all that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. So I grew up, I come from a military family. My dad was a Navy analyst. So we literally moved around every 2 to 3 years my entire life until I got to high school. And then we kind of stuck around for 4 years in Virginia. So I say I'm from Fredericksburg, Virginia, because that's where I lived the longest. But then honestly, immediately after graduation, I started moving around again. And so I've lived in a lot of different places, but mostly back east.
Very cool. So you went to university. What did you take and why?
Yeah, so initially I always wanted to be sort of an inventor, right? I always had these ideas of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this existed? And so I thought that meant I wanted to be an engineer. And so I took some engineering classes. I turns out I really suck at math and, have dyslexia, et cetera, that made that really difficult. And just not very fun, right? The aspects of engineering, like they really focus on validation through math, and that just wasn't my thing. So that kind of threw me for a loop. I spent a bunch of years actually getting an art degree. Illustration was I think more close to what I wanted to do than fine art. But I kind of took both classes, right? And then during that period, I found like my best friend was going to college with me. He went to a different college than I did. And he saw this group of students presenting small scale trucks to, a bunch of executives. And he's like, hey, you got to come check this out. It's in the library. Just come see what they're doing. And it was an industrial design group at Brigham Young University. And they were presenting to Ford these, future truck concepts. And I sat and listened to the whole thing. It took like 4 hours. And, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So I approached one of the professors and I just asked, what class is this? What major is this? How do I get into it? Turned out that was the dean of the department. He kind of got me into some summer classes. Then that got me into the school. And then like that turned into my future career.
Very cool. So walk us through that career, because you've done a ton of really cool stuff that with huge companies that, most people have heard of, if not all of them, right?
Yeah. Well, so my angle on design may be a little bit different than most designers. I was always interested in making stuff, like physically, like how do I make this with my hands? And a lot of designers will get really caught up in the concept, the high concept, which is sort of an art thing, right? Or a creative thing, like, oh, wouldn't it be amazing if there was a world that this could exist? But that isn't necessarily the world we live in sometimes. And so my goal was always, all right, how do I get to build something that's real, that's as close to that ideal dream as possible? And that forced me to be very grounded. So I ended up still, even as an industrial designer, the industrial design school is in the engineering department of the school that I actually took those engineering classes from originally. And so I ended up working with all those same professors, a lot of the same students through Capstone and Formula SAE. And, if anybody's had an engineering background, that's like, how do you make real engineering stuff? And for a lot of engineers, like that's the first time they make real things and get out of theoretical engineering design. And so, that gave me like a real great founding in how do I make stuff real. And then that led into I wanted to get a degree specifically in automotive design. I was always infatuated with cars. I thought cars were like the pinnacle of design. That was, I wanted to be an automotive designer. And to do that, you need to go to Art Center. That's the
Okay.
school worldwide that will get you into automotive design. So it was either, I had already gotten a bachelor's degree. So it was either get another bachelor's degree or I go to Art Center's graduate industrial design courses, which they weren't automotive design, they were product design. So I actually went and worked with them to actually get permission to take an automotive as many automotive courses as I could. Basically, I made my own curriculum. So I took all of their graduate program work and then added all the automotive stuff onto it. So I was able to basically get
Interesting.
kind of like an automotive graduate degree, even though they didn't have it at the time. But they wanted to have one. And so later, when they actually developed a graduate industrial design automotive program, I got a job there teaching like almost right out of school, which was that's kind of rare for Art Center. And I taught there for 8 years. So while I was doing all these other design jobs, I was also teaching at Art Center graduate
Cool.
classes. So I don't know. That's sort of the background of how I kind of got into tech, I guess. And
Okay.
so I've been involved with a bunch of high tech companies. I worked on the Boeing 787 pretty early in my career as an intern. I worked for NASA doing Mars rovers and lunar rovers and that kind of thing. Got into augmented reality with Daiquiri, doing face computers, which has come around. We were doing it about 15 years ago, so it was like
Oh, wow.
pretty early stuff. But it's amazing how much it hasn't changed. Like when Meta came out, I was like, oh yeah, we did that 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that was pretty wild. And I understand, why they made some of the decisions they made, just because we decided not to do those decisions. But uh, then I also I got into aerospace, through Boeing. But then I worked for Kitty Hawk, and Kitty Hawk was it was founded by Larry Page to make eVTOLs, and it was kind of early in the eVTOL game, before some of the really big players. Most of the really big players are spin-offs from the group that was put together by Larry Page early on in Kitty
Interesting.
Hawk's time period. So so I've been involved with electric vertical takeoff and landing craft, and I guess really that's like maybe the thing that's tied my whole career together is electric vehicles. So when I was at NASA, we were making electric vehicles. They were hybrid electric with hydrogen and all that, but it was batteries, right?
Yeah.
And then I worked for Fisker designing the first, it was like pre Tesla electric luxury car, with a solar panel roof, but it was a hybrid also. And, that was electric. The 787 has some electric components in it, and then Kitty Hawk, is all electric flight. So I know a lot about electric vehicles. Um, and I guess anyway, that's what leads into Exodo. It's like I know a lot about electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are the future. There's not a lot of really great electric motorcycles out there. There ought to be. There's some really great solutions that can happen for safety and the benefit of the rider with an electric vehicle. Batteries are still a little weak, but they're getting there. And so how could I design a vehicle that
Hmm.
that applies all the really great benefits of batteries and technology to make riding experiences better, but with the stuff that actually works, not like the theoretical. Like really high speed motorcycles are going to use so much battery that they just end up
Right.
being a really heavy bike that's not that fun to ride. And so like that whole like Formula E race bike series right now is still kind of not a great daily rider.
Interesting. Okay. So, how are you solving that problem you just outlined, and what made you actually decide to go for it and create what you've created? Let's dive into that.
Yeah. Well, so what we created was a self-stabilizing electric scooter, and the reason it's a scooter, most of the world gets around on two wheels, more than four,
Sure.
and those scooters are the main way that people do it. Right? There are motorcycles, there are bicycles, but scooters have kind of this really easy ride because they have a low center of gravity. They're really maneuverable. They're able to get around in cities really easily. So in urban environments, often it's some sort of a scooter that people are getting around on.
Sure.
And because of the lower speeds in an urban environment, that that caters to this problem with batteries, which is they don't have a whole lot of energy compared to like a gallon of gasoline.
Right.
And so I augmented that with like a removable battery system. So this
Okay.
removable battery system allows you to basically swap out batteries really quickly. There's 2 slots. Each slot will hold about 45 miles of range. The battery will hold 45 miles of range, depending on how you drive. And that gives you the ability to get around more distance than what most people do in an urban environment in the daytime. And if they wanted to go even further, they can swap out the battery. It takes 5 seconds, and then away they go, right? And so in that vehicle, I'm trying to solve a couple of problems. One, you don't need an SUV to get around in your urban environment. You don't need to take the bus either. So, and you don't need to take a bicycle. So you're taking something that's more capable and safer than what the other options are, and more economical.
Right. Well, and it's cheaper than a motorbike, correct?
Yeah, yeah, significantly cheaper, and the cost of operation is significantly cheaper if you're comparing directly with like an internal combustion motorcycle. Internal combustion motorcycles, because they're small motors, they take a lot of maintenance, and then there's the cost of gas and all of that. And our insurance is really low, cost of operation is really low, cost of nickel to charge the battery for 45 miles. That's
Oh
like
wow.
pretty
Yeah.
great.
It's nothing. Yeah.
And then the cost of the vehicle, there's no maintenance, right? It's an electric vehicle, so you're gonna have to change the brakes at some point. But with
Sure.
regen braking and everything, like you just don't have to do that very much. And it's not a very heavy vehicle, so you're not changing brakes like you are in a Hummer or a Tesla.
Got it. Okay. And then how long does it take to actually charge?
Yeah. So if you're actually charging from zero, which almost never happens, it takes
Yeah.
4 hours. We have a
Okay.
little charger. It's a 110 charger brick that you can carry with you, or you can buy 2 of them and keep them. If you're driving to the office and back, you just keep one in each location and then charge wherever. Or you can just battery swap, right? So if you buy with 2 batteries, then you have one that's always charging. And so you can just swap the battery. It takes 5 seconds.
Interesting. Okay. So I want to dive a little bit into kind of coming up with the look and feel of it. I know it's hard when it's audio only, but how did you kind of iterate through to the current design that you actually decided to build and people can actually ride today?
Yeah, so we're currently available to purchase and DOT approved. We did that in less than 2 years. That's
Wow.
pretty hard to do with a really tiny team. And
Sure.
so what we did is we found my thing's always been making, right? So I
Yeah.
found a way to make the product with the least amount of R&D, with the maximum amount of iteration change. So the idea was, how much of this can I buy off the shelf? How much of it do I have to actually make myself? And how do I minimize all of that so that the cost can be something that's reasonable, right? If you make, there's some electric vehicle companies where they're like, oh, we're going to make everything from scratch. That makes a very bespoke vehicle, which may look great, but how do you get that serviced? How do you
Yeah.
inevitably you're going to make mistakes, right? Because when you're making something really complicated, the thought that those 1,000 parts are going to go together perfectly the first time is next to zero.
Hmm.
So you have to
Okay.
iterate. And if you're doing that with more parts, then that means you're going to have more iteration because you're going to have more mistakes. So if you can buy pre-certified off-the-shelf parts, that makes DOT approval really quick, but it also makes your mistakes really low. And so the goal was like, how do I, we're not trying to revolutionize the entire vehicle. It's a scooter. It's an electric scooter, which is revolutionary in some respects, but it's not world changing. They exist. The part that we were revolutionizing is the front and rear suspension. It's a front wheel drive vehicle, which for a scooter, like there aren't front wheel drive scooters. That doesn't exist. And self stabilizing, that also doesn't really exist in our market. So those are the things we had to change. We had to change the drivetrain. We had to make a suspension that actually would allow a front wheel drive setup without negatively impacting your suspension. And then we had to make a self stabilizing system that would actually hold all of that up and still drive like a motorcycle. One of the biggest problems that exist in the market with three wheelers is the three wheeler immediately makes your vehicle not a motorcycle anymore because it drives like a
Ah,
golf cart instead of driving like a motorcycle. You can't lean. The part that's fun about riding a motorcycle is it leans. And that's also what makes
okay.
it safer, really. So if you have a vehicle that doesn't lean, it's basically a golf cart that's like not as stable as a golf cart. But if you make it lean and you can make it like really intuitive to ride, then motorcyclists can jump on this and ride, and it feels really normal. It just holds them up. and then non-riders can get on it, and it's not that different, right? It feels like a bicycle, or it feels like it
Ah,
behaves like it should.
okay. Interesting. So why did you go front wheel drive? Because of what you just outlined?
I didn't initially, and I get
Okay.
questions about this a lot. So this is actually a really great question. Why is it front wheel drive, and why is it one wheel in the front instead of two wheels in the front? Because the typical thought is if you put two in the front, it's actually more stable. And that seems logical until you actually build it. And that's the other thing, right? Building. Like we
Yeah.
theorized a lot of times, like, oh, it'll look like this, it'll look like that. And then we built it and it didn't work. And it drove like
Ah,
a golf cart. And I'm like, why doesn't this work? And so it was a little backwards, right? I had to figure out why it didn't work and why it didn't behave the way I wanted it to. And what I learned from that experience is if you put all of the steering, suspension, and leaning mechanism on the front wheels, they all get in the way of each other. You aren't able to do
ah,
more of a lean than 15 degrees. Almost every leaning front wheel two wheeler out there cannot lean more than 15 degrees. That degree angle of lean limits your speed around a turn. That means, like, if if you can only lean 15 degrees, you're probably, depending on your center of gravity, only going to be able to go around that turn at about 20 miles an hour, which is really kind of slow. You have to brake a lot to go around a turn on a vehicle like that.
right.
Whereas if you put um, all of the leaning in the back, you're able to counter steer the way that you normally do on a normal motorcycle. And I won't get into the whole counter steering. There's lots of YouTube videos about like how important counter steer is in riding a motorcycle. But if you can counter steer, you feel like a motorcycle. You're no longer a golf cart, you're a motorcycle. And if the stability's in the rear, it doesn't get in the way of you counter steering. It doesn't get in the way of you leaning. We can do a full 45-degree lean, and we're limiting it to 45. You can actually lean even deeper than that. But we found that with new riders, that will actually trip them up a little bit because it feels like they're falling over. But 45 is like, that's more than what 95% of motorcycle riders ever do. Like the whole idea of chicken strips on your tires, like you don't ever use that outside edge because you just don't lean that far. But on our vehicle, you can, and you do, because it's actually fun and you can do it without falling over. And so you don't have chicken strips. Like you can actually just enjoy the full range of the vehicle, but at speeds that actually make sense. On a motorcycle, you're never leaning more than 15 degrees, even if you're going like up in the canyons going 100 miles an hour. Ours, you can do a 45-degree lean at 5 miles an hour on city streets, like when you're doing a U-turn in traffic. Like that's
Interesting.
usable performance.
And okay, so just so I'm clear, so I'm leaning say 45 degrees or less, you're stabilizing me so like I won't fall over?
As yeah, and there's a little bit of it, like as long as you're moving, right?
Okay, yeah, okay, okay.
If you're totally stopped and you lean over 45,
Yeah,
it
okay.
will start to fall over. But as long as
Got
you're
it.
going 5 miles an hour, it is active, it is stabilizing, it will literally hold you up. You don't have to put a foot down, you don't have to do, like, your body's not doing anything. The only thing your body has to do, you have to maintain your stability on the seat, right? You have to not fall off the vehicle, which
Right.
also could happen. It hasn't happened, but it could happen.
Okay. So how are you doing that stabilization? Is it similar to different than competitors or just other companies that are doing this in their vehicles, or did you have to build your own kind of thing?
We had to build our own kind of thing. This was so I got a patent right out of grad school for this leaning mechanism,
Okay.
and the thing that I realized was that active systems. This was so I graduated in 2009. This was when like autonomous vehicles. It was still like this big question, like, oh, is that going to actually be a thing or not? I think we all kind of know what happened there, but there was always a frequent discussion in our classes about like how much do we trust automation? How much do we trust IMUs and all these complicated electronic systems to keep us alive? And on an
Yeah.
electric vehicle, especially a tiny one like the one that we're making, I felt like that was like a little bit too much of a risk. You know, they're
Mm.
they're they're really great systems. There's a lot of really great electronic technology that exists out there that could make things safer, but the idea that it could fail, and because it's kind of new tech, was pretty high. So I kind of learned as much as I could about how to stabilize through IMUs and other um, inertial measurement units and things. But what I wanted to do is actually make a physical linkage that allowed for leaning. And so
Okay.
that's what we ended up creating. We ended up creating a system that allows your center of gravity to basically work work with gravity. So when you're riding a bicycle and
Yeah.
you take your hands off the handlebars,
Yeah.
it returns to center, right? And that's why you can ride a bike with your hands off the handlebars, is because basically it's lifting the bicycle in a turn slightly, and when you let your hands off the handlebars, it returns you to center because gravity's forcing you down, and it's the rake angle of that front wheel that does that. I basically made the same system in the rear. And that same
I
system
see.
is basically lifting the vehicle slightly in a turn. And so it's forcing it. There's a force that's trying to return you to center. And that force that's trying to return you to center gives you a balance that allows you to stay upright.
That's cool. And you just happen to build this or come up with this patent and idea before you ever had the idea to build this scooter, correct?
No. Um,
Okay.
so I was in grad school. My thesis was uh, how do you make a four-wheeled vehicle, a car, behave
Okay.
like a motorcycle? So how do I make a
Ah,
small car drive like a motorcycle? And it was specifically because I love motorcycles, but I also understand I've been riding for 30 years. I understand the inherent danger of motorcycles. If you go around a turn and you tap the brakes a little bit, like you can fall down and hurt yourself bad. I know that from experience. And so it was always like, how do I make that experience that I love so much safer?
right.
And
Okay.
so then that led into my thesis advisor was like, that's never going to work. And so I had to make a physical product and like give it to her to ride. And so she's like, okay, I'm convinced. I wrote it. It feels amazing. And then that turned into a little three-wheeled scooter that, like a bicycle scooter,
Okay.
called Zoomer, that I made 80 of them. We sold out of them fairly quickly. It was really fun, but it was like long enough ago that electric vehicles, it was 2009. Bird and Lime didn't exist. Like these
I
tiny
see.
electric scooters, like that, what we think of as kick scooters nowadays, like they didn't exist. And so there were some people that were really excited about it, and they sold them really, we sold through them really quick, but but it really just didn't turn into like a viable company. But it was always in my head that this would make a really great motorcycle. And that vehicle was a three-wheeler specifically because it was just easier to do that than four, because I needed to put a motor on it. And instead of getting two motors to behave properly together, it was just easier to put one. And so
Mm,
that made the three-wheeler. And then so that outgrowth made, well, why don't I make this thing a three-wheeler as well? It would just basically be like my previous product, just more roadworthy. And that's kind of
okay.
where we're going as a company, is just like, how do I make something that's more roadworthy, more capable, and still super safe, and still embraces that joy of riding?
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, how do you actually do the manufacturing then? Because you said you buy a bunch of parts. Are you like putting them together yourself with your team? Do you have like a plant? Are you outsourcing that? How does that all kind of work?
That's a great question. So I used to think as a designer, like once you've made the design, you're 80% there, right? Like, yeah, that was where all the work happened. And then, as I've worked through my career, I realized that there's so many disciplines that make a successful company, and
Sure.
manufacturing
Yeah.
is really at the core of it. Like, if you can't make that thing in an amazing way, it doesn't matter how great the design is. You actually have to make an amazing, great product. And so manufacturing has been, again, going back to making things, like I always liked that part. So I've found that was really the core of being successful with any product, is making it right. And so what we've done is we've leveraged this massive worldwide market of pre-certified DOT approved parts,
Okay.
and found the very best of those products and integrated them into our product. And so we're basically, I guess one could call it like a big product integrator, but in another sense, it is a completely new vehicle, right? There is no other vehicle that's like this. There is no other front wheel drive motorcycle in the market.
Right.
Um, and I assume that's just because they haven't ridden our ridden our product yet. I mean, a lot of the big OEMs have. experimented with front wheel drive, but it's always been such a complicated process to get that suspension to work right that,
Right.
it just never turned into anything. But so what we've done is low volume manufacturing is really, really hard. But what we've done is made a place where all of our subsystems, the front wheel and the rear wheel suspensions, basically bolt on to almost any scooter that exists through the triple tree in the front and the swing arm connection in the back.
Oh, interesting.
And so those are made in subassemblies in Arizona. And then the vehicle is manufactured overseas and shipped in as like already a pre-assembled vehicle as a two-wheeler. And then we
Right.
basically take our subassemblies, we take off the parts that are not necessary from that previous vehicle, and then we add our subassemblies on there, and then switch the motor from the rear to the front. And then all of a sudden, that's our product. And because it's actually sort of a simple process, and because we've already taken care of like the part that's proprietary to us, then it makes the assembly possible to actually kind of be done almost anywhere. So, as we continue to grow, right now we're available in the United States, and as we continue to grow overseas, it would be really easy for us then to um, create micro factories in the EU, for instance, that allow you to get into the EU more easily and be approved through their certification processes, the equivalent
That
of their DOT.
interesting. That's actually really fascinating. Actually, I think that's really good advice in itself, right? Because to your point a few minutes ago, it's like everybody thinks they need to build everything, but you guys have really simplified it to where you build the parts that are different and needed, and then get somebody else to do the rest of it, and then you can bypass a bunch of just regulatory and manufacturing stuff. That's actually really interesting.
There's
So,
a lot of companies
go
that
ahead.
have literally spent decades
Sure.
perfecting, like, shocks, right? We don't wanna design shocks, we wanna design a scooter, and so, like, if we can buy really great shocks from somebody else, that's a boon for everybody.
So, what advice would you give to somebody that's maybe not trying to build necessarily something in like a scooter or motorbike, but you could clearly apply what you've done to a bunch of physical products, whether they're driving or not? So, what advice would you give people to actually go do some of that? And like, how did you find these companies to actually make the parts and products that you need?
Yeah, so the first one, the advice that I would give to people that are trying to make things, I think too often, um, uh, designers and engineers think of this idea of the creation process as like immaculate conception, right? Like you have this idea, and then it just is going to all come together the first time I build it, and it's going to work perfectly the very first time. And that's just the wrong way to think about manufacturing or prototyping or design or any of those processes.
Yeah,
It is a process of like scientific it's like a scientific method. You have a theory, you test that theory. Whether that theory works or doesn't work, you learn something, and then you do your next test. And so every prototype you create, you're doing a test on whether your theory works. And so
right.
you should be able to, uh, through careful testing, careful prototyping, you can actually answer the questions about the unknowns that you have. And then you can also um, validate specific concepts and invalidate other concepts. And so then you're getting smarter every time you make a prototype. And if you evaluate it that way, then every prototype, I mean, that's what SpaceX does, right? Like when everybody talks about,
Yeah.
oh, they blew up another rocket, they blew up another rocket, but they learned so much. And there's so much to learn whenever you're making a complex thing. That's the only way to learn it. You can sit and theorize in a room with a bunch of intelligent
Mm,
people. Doesn't matter how intelligent or how much experience they have until they actually put all those parts together and try to see if they work. That's when you actually find out whether that works or not. And so, um, yeah, you just got to build something and let it fail. Figure out how to make your failures as inexpensive as possible and as low bar as possible. Your first prototypes should be literally made out of trash that you have around the office. Like you have a bunch of cardboard boxes, build a thing out of cardboard boxes first. If you have a physical thing that's out of CAD that you can actually touch, immediately you start to see things that you wouldn't see in a CAD program.
totally.
Because in CAD, you can kind of trick yourself into thinking that you're seeing what you want to see. And two different people can see two different things, even if they're looking at the same model on the same screen. And So just get it out of CAD as quick as possible, get it into physical, and then prototype as many times as you possibly can for as cheap as you can.
No, I think that's actually really good advice. I'm curious though, how do you actually go about finding good vendors for some, like your shocks example, right?
Yeah.
Like, did you just order 10 things of shocks that you were hoping could work and then pick the best one and maybe modify them a bit, or walk us through that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard to vet vendors. There's a few attributes that you want from a vendor: quick response, like really easy to talk to. Language is always a barrier. Culture is always a barrier. Time zones is always a
Yeah.
barrier. Shipping can be a barrier depending on time of year and how far it has to go. So what you want to do is you want to find vendors that they know how to work with you. They are willing to work with you. They're willing to talk with you about things. But there is still a certain level of kind of taking a shot in the dark. You do
Right.
order 3 or 4 shocks and see which one seems to work best. But also, ideally, you want to find a shock that has multiple different vendors. You don't want to lock
Ah,
yourself into like, oh, this shock is really great, but there's only one vendor that sells it, and I'll have to change my design if I change the shock. But if there's
I
like
see.
3 vendors that sell that exact same shock, that's pretty great because one of those 3 is going to be super responsive. And if something happens to fail with that relationship, you can still fall back on someone else.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. So I want to talk a little bit about, you kind of maybe quickly touched on it, but how can people, or where can people actually like buy and drive these scooters?
Yeah. So currently they're for sale on our website, exotoinc.com. And they're being sold throughout the United States. So anywhere in the
Okay.
US you can purchase. We have So there's a rental company in Maui that is
Okay.
currently renting these vehicles. So if you're on a trip to Maui, you can actually take a ride. You can rent one of these vehicles for the day and ride them around for pretty cheap. And we're looking for some rental vendors locally in LA as well. So anywhere in LA, obviously, our company's around. We can set up test rides. Someone can set up a test ride through our website, and then we can do rides in Arizona as well as Southern California. Outside of that, we've had people fly in to ride the vehicle and do those things. We're still a super small company, so we don't have a dealer network. We are basically selling direct to consumer or directly to businesses, and so we're working on building that out, making that easier for people. We also do shows. We've done the Electrified Expo, et cetera, and we've gotten a lot of people riding it from that, or CES. We've been to CES as well. So we're out there. We are real, and anybody that wants to ride the vehicle, we'll find a way that we can make it easy for you.
Very cool. Okay. So if I place like an order, say today, how long does it take for me to actually get one? I get shipping can take, days or whatever, but
Yeah.
ideally is it like weeks, months? What's the time frame roughly?
So from the initial order, we'll contact the buyer. We'll
Okay.
talk to them, make sure that they're buying, that they understand what exactly they're buying. Do you want 2 batteries? Do you want 1 battery? Do
I
you want
see.
extra chargers? Do you want a single charger? What color do you want? Make sure that we're going to verify the order with the customer. That'll happen within 24 hours. And
Okay.
then from that 24 hours, it's less than 6 weeks. Our goal is
Okay.
actually 4 weeks. Currently, we have vehicles on stock ready to deliver. So it's shorter than that, but ideally it's between 6 to 8 weeks. 8 weeks would be a push if we got to a place where we needed to reorder parts for something large. Right now we're it's 6 weeks.
Okay. No, that makes sense. And then you mentioned color. Like, do I just pick from a set of colors, or can I say I need whatever?
Well, so that's the thing. We can do custom colors.
Okay.
So from the website, you can choose one of 3 colors. It's blue, green, and black.
Okay.
And then there's a number of sticker options that we also provide. But then we can do custom colors. Like that's totally we are totally open to doing wraps, etc.
Okay.
This is a product that um, it lends itself to personality, and we're happy to like help people express their personality through this vehicle.
Okay. So is there other customizations that you guys can do with the customer, or how to like, because I get that obviously you can't do a ton of stuff just from a regulatory standpoint, but is what customizations could people do, or options that they could add, I guess.
Well, so one of the options that is available is a three motor version. So
Okay.
so it's basically three-wheel drive. That allows you to do off-roading. It has some really great benefits for traction control, etc. It makes the vehicle a little bit more expensive, but not terribly. And so that's a pretty major adaptation. You can get knobby wheels instead of street tires. That's another customization. Um, a lot of the rental companies that we've been talking to, they're really interested in tracking technologies, being
Ah,
able to do Internet of Things, IoT connectivity, GPS tracking. There is a module that we can add. It's a third party module, et cetera. So we can add it so that you just get the thing out of the box, and but then you have to like do a subscription with that and all those things. So it's not something that comes standard, but obviously it's pretty easy for us to add to it. And there was also a large company that was interested in using our technology for mapping of roads. So
yeah,
they would put their
interesting.
system on the back of our vehicle because it was self-stabilizing. That would allow them to do mapping in locations where their car, specifically in countries where a car would be a little bit difficult to weave through traffic. That required some customization that was like pretty unique, and we're open to doing that. Like that's totally within
I
our
see.
capability and interest.
Okay. So is there any software running on the vehicle that needs to get updated, or like how does that work?
Well, so the software is basically, the drive system, right? So
Okay.
the electric drive system, but that's something that, it's not changing, so it doesn't require constant updates. Like Tesla's system, they're doing a bunch of autonomous things that, that's why they have updates. Ours, it's well sorted.
I
It
see.
doesn't require
Yeah.
updates.
So, well, and that was gonna be my next question. Like, are you or ever gonna build like an autonomous version of this? Does it even make sense?
I think it does, as you know, the mistakes that autonomy makes are often catastrophic,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
They're not like little mistakes. They're often like deadly mistakes. We want to use autonomous systems that can aid riders in being safer. Notifications when someone's riding too close.
Yeah, I see.
Notifications that something's coming out in front of you. A situation where the vehicle responds for you, I think is still very dangerous because
Agreed.
your
Yeah.
physical body needs to respond, not just the vehicle. And so in a different vehicle, maybe, but not in this vehicle.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, makes sense. So I'm curious. Are you looking at building other vehicles that are use the same form factor or different form factor, or is this kind of like this is your what you're doing?
Yeah, our march is always towards more roadworthy vehicles, right? And as the name suggests, ex auto is the idea of leaving your car at home. Like in situations where you don't need to take a big 4 5 passenger vehicle alone to go,
Yeah.
a short distance, you should have other options to take something different. That, especially in the US, requires you to be freeway legal. Right now, our vehicle is limited to 45 miles an hour, and we don't go on the freeway specifically for insurance purposes. For a really young company to get insurance, a liability insurance, is really kind of hard. And, so
Sure.
a lot of our cost is liability insurance. And luckily, we've never had a claim, so our insurance keeps going down every year, which is great.
Hmm.
But if we were a freeway legal vehicle, that would actually be significantly more expensive than it is for us. And so
I
by
see.
limiting our speed, we're getting our foot in the door. But we know that in the United States, having a freeway legal electric vehicle with battery swapping technology and self stabilization would replace a lot of people's commuter car, and it would be way more fun than driving a Toyota Yaris or something like that. And so, if we can unlock that, I feel like that would really change the way Americans get around, and that's kind of my goal as a company is to change people's assumptions about mobility and help them to find the right mobility solution instead of just always using this Swiss Army knife SUV to get around alone.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, and it also probably would help with just traffic congestion too, right? I'm
Yeah.
guessing there.
It will. So if you can remove, I can't remember the exact stat, but if you can remove like 15% of vehicles from the road, if you could just switch them over to, public transportation or to a smaller vehicle, congestion ceases to exist, right? There's like this tipping point
Interesting.
where like if it's a very small number of vehicles that if you can get those off of the road or put them into an alternative solution that doesn't take up so much space, then all of a sudden the roads become so much more open, and then the whole traffic slowing thing that happens with congestion just goes away. And so the idea is if you can use the resources, the infrastructure that we have more efficiently, then all of a sudden our transportation, instead of building more lanes of highway, you just make all of our cars smaller and make them more efficient.
Right. No, that's interesting. Maybe this is a dumb question, but it just kind of came to me. Can you ride it in like a bike lane, or do you have to be on the road?
That's a good question. It is technically an electric motorcycle.
Okay.
So technically, you go anywhere that motorcycles and cars are allowed to go. It's a DOT approved vehicle. It has a license plate. It has insurance.
Right.
Um, it technically shouldn't, like on bike paths. It is not legal to drive this vehicle on a bike path.
Okay.
Um, in actual practice, in the state of California, lane splitting is legal, and it's legal
Yeah.
in a bunch of other states as well. Um, Lane splitting, you're doing what you can to stay safe and survive, right? And
Yeah.
so you are kind of maneuvering through traffic, etc. It technically should not be legal to drive it on a bike path, but it is significantly safer to ride our vehicle than I feel than it is to ride a bicycle. If you're riding a bicycle in traffic, you don't have turn
Yeah.
signals, you don't have rearview mirrors, you don't
Totally.
have anti-lock brakes. Like all the things that are necessary to make DOT approved vehicles make you actually safer in traffic. And I feel really uncomfortable riding a bicycle at 15 miles an hour when everybody else is going 30. Like that's the reason we go 45.
I
You
see.
have the ability to not be the slowest guy on the road. You have the ability to actually use all those DOT approved uh, devices to actually make yourself safer and keep you safe on the road. Whereas on a bicycle, as much as people love bicycles and the experience of riding a bike is great, it's just not as safe as it could be, and makes me really, really uncomfortable.
No, fair enough. Because like you even see people riding like those like Lime scooters like down the freeway, and you're like, wow, that's
Yeah.
yeah, like
And you
like
put the
I
brakes on that, and you're gonna go over the handlebars on your face, and you're
yeah
probably not wearing a helmet.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, well, okay, no, that's cool. So I'm curious. You've obviously done a ton of design in the physical world. What other advice would you give to people that are maybe looking to get into that field? Because I think it seems to me that it's going to, because manufacturing getting a lot cheaper and easier, in the sense that like to get started, it's not an
Yeah.
easy process, but
But it is getting easier for sure.
I think a lot more people are getting into the space though, and want to get in the space because the bar of entry is a lot lower. It's like, what advice do you give to them to actually, that maybe you wish you would have known coming in now?
Um, well, so that whole idea of learning how to manufacture, learning manufacturing processes, all of that is like super great advice. But then there's also this business component to it that maybe I wish I had understood a little bit better when I was younger.
Okay.
So many I see so many students, so many young people, so many entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs, that they start off with this really great idea, and they're like, if somebody just gives me $1 million, then I can
Yeah.
make this thing, and it may be the greatest idea in the world, but if you've never had experience building a company or never had an experience building a product or building out manufacturing, it's really tough. It's a tough sell to get someone to give you $1 million to do, and obviously it happens,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
um, but if you can actually get to a place where you have a product that that works, even if it only almost works, right? You have a physical thing, and then you have so much better of a story than I have this really great dream and some sketches, And so I guess what I would suggest is instead of feeling like the first step is I need to find the investor to give me the money to make my dream, it's what is the thing I can do today with the money that I have today and the resources I have today that can get me one step closer to that dream. And if you can
Yeah.
get one step closer, then how do you get two steps closer and three steps closer? And then at some point, maybe you bootstrap yourself into having your own company without needing to take somebody's outside funding to make that happen. And that's where Exodo came from, is just us bootstrapping. What is it that we can do today? What is it that we can do tomorrow, until we had a product that was available in the market?
No, I think that's actually really good advice. And the one part that I think not everybody, but some people miss, that I see all the time, is when you take money from somebody, you, especially at those early stages, you own a very small piece of that company. It might even be
Right.
less than 50%, right? Where if you go the route that you're talking about, is you might own 100% or 80% when you raise money, or after you raise money, instead of owning 40%. And that's like after one round, right? And you can get so diluted that by the time your dream is here, you own like 2% of the
Yeah.
company.
And you're basically an employee at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you could get canned.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
just,
and that is something that is often lost on a lot of people, is just what are you giving up that early to like take the easy route? And I guess the other thing is it's not necessarily the easier route. I mean, the easier route in a lot of ways is doing what you know best.
yeah. Interesting. So have you guys taken money at some point, or do you plan on in the future, or you have no idea?
We often look for, the ideal relationship investor,
Yeah.
somebody who really believes in us and really believes in the product and is really excited about making this go big. We haven't found that group yet. We've talked to investors, and it's always kind of been like, well, there's some aspect missing, for that relationship to actually pan out. And so we've just been bootstrapped. There's a core group of 5 people that we've all put money into it. At times more money than we expected we would.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And we're all personally invested in this company and making this successful. And that's gotten us to here. And as we keep moving forward, we do know that there will be a point at which we probably will take outside investment to be able to grow more quickly. And when we find the right investors, and we whenever the situation's right, that'll happen.
Yeah. I actually think that's really good advice too, because a lot of people are just, oh, somebody's willing to give me money, I'm going to take it. And then the relationship just is, it was never good to begin with, and it can destroy the company, right?
I think that's exactly the equivalent of someone's willing to marry me, I'll marry anyone that
Yeah,
in my way.
yeah, yeah.
Like, in a business relationship, it is, an investor relationship is going to be years. that's
Yeah.
that's going to be minimum 5 years. And so it's a lot more like a marriage than dating or any other
Yeah, yeah.
business relationship you've ever had, because you're connected to this person or group of people for a really long time.
No, I think that's really good advice. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show. Is there anything else that you want to mention or that we didn't cover today? And then close out the show with where people can, book a test drive and order one of these things.
Yeah, so I'm glad we got to do this. I think we covered everything. There isn't anything else that's like burning. But if anybody would like to contact me, it's tim@exodoinc.com. I'm happy to answer questions about physics and vehicles and manufacturing and whatnot. And yeah, like if you're interested in the vehicle, book a test ride, and we'll set up a day, and I'll come ride with you. Sounds like fun.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Tim. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Talk to you
Thank
soon.
you. Okay, bye.
For more episodes, you can find us on all major podcasting platforms or visit IamBuildingTheFuture.com. Join us next time and keep building the future.